Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Awesome Albums with Awesome Andrew. Since the beginning of the creation of rock and roll, people have been debating on which song is the greatest. Now I'm going to talk about one of those today, and that song appears on Led Zeppelin's fourth album. This album was released on November 8th, 1971, and is known by most as Led Zeppelin IV. However, some people just know it as Untitled, some call it Four Symbols, some call it Zoso, which I'll explain that in a minute, and some call it Runes. There are so many potential titles for this album. Why couldn't they just go with the pattern of their first three albums of Led Zeppelin, or Led Zeppelin I, followed by Led Zeppelin II later that year, and then Led Zeppelin III the following year? That's because critics believed that Led Zeppelin's success was all built on the hype and not their talent. To prove them wrong, they removed their name in anything having to do with Led Zeppelin, which is why you won't see any pictures of the band or anything like that on the front, the back, the spine, the gatefold. In fact, not even on the sleeve that holds the record. You have to go onto the record itself before you find the name of the band. And the band consists of vocalist Robert Plant, guitarist Jimmy Page, bassist John Paul Jones, and drummer John Bonham. Wow, two Johns in this band. Now back to what I was saying. Since there was no way to identify who made the album, since there was no name anywhere on it, this caused a lot of confusion among the critics and among the fans, and it especially made Atlantic Records pretty mad because they were afraid it would hurt sales, which I'd be mad too. I mean, you're murdering your success there because nobody would be able to know who it is that made it. That didn't matter to Led Zeppelin. I mean, this album made diamond, which means they sold over 10 million copies. And I mean, they sold 22 million, over 22 million copies. Let's get back to the album cover. The album consists of an anonymous man with a bundle of sticks. And if you unfold the album and look at it, you'll see the image continues around to the back to show that the man is simply a picture on the wall. The wall is broken to reveal a modern-day, for the time, apartment complex. Fans were trying so hard to figure out the meaning of this album cover and what it meant that they even started to reflect on their own mute refusal to communicate with the outside. And the mysteries of the album don't stop there. No, they don't. Let's look at the sleeve that holds the album. The sleeve shows the list of songs on the album, of course, where it's recorded at, and, oh, that's cool, Jimmy Page produced this album. Now look at the top. There are four symbols at the top of the sleeve. And this is why some fans call it Four Symbols, or Zoso, which is what the first symbol says. And fans have been trying to figure out for years what those symbols mean. And Led Zeppelin hasn't fully revealed what they mean either. Even Robert Plant asked Jimmy Page what his symbol meant, and he told him, "I'm only going to tell you once, and never again." And over the years, Plant forgot what it meant. Now, I'll try my best to explain each symbol. First we have Zoso, which was Jimmy Page's symbol, which he really just made it up, and he just wants to make it clear there's nothing satanic about it. A lot of people believe that it is. Next in line we have John Paul Jones, which he saw this symbol in a book about a religious cult from the Middle Ages, and thought it looked cool. Some people believe it to represent someone who is both confident and competent. The third one is John Bonham's symbol, which is believed the three circles represent the relationship between man, woman, and child. And last we have Plant. Plant says the symbol of the feather came from a fantastical ancient civilization known as the Mu civilization, which existed over 14,000 years ago. Another fun fact is the feather is identical to the one that's used by the Egyptian goddess of justice and fairness. One more thing I'd like to talk about is the gatefold I mentioned earlier. This man is known as the Hermit. He was inspired by a tarot card, and a lot of people believe that the character was out of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings series, which, yeah, I can see that. I mean, Led Zeppelin is a huge fan of Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, even including references to the series in some of their songs, like mentioning Mordor in the song Ramble on their second album. Now let's talk about the music, and about how the album managed to sell over 22 million copies, despite not having their name on it anywhere. Right now is the sound of the tape rolling as Jimmy Page warms up his guitar. This part's overdubbed and has 3 separate tracks, and the sound of them syncing together is how Jimmy Page likes to describe as waking the army of guitars. Something interesting about the song is the title, Black Dog. There's no mention of a dog anywhere in the song. See, the band was recording at Headley Grange Mansion in England when they found a black Labrador Retriever walking around the house. The band decided to feed it. Then, later on, when they needed to come up with a name for the song, they thought of their canine friend. John Paul Jones came up with the bass riff there, and the band always encouraged him to come up with new content, new songs, whatever. Now, he didn't manage to come up with a song, but he came up with this bass riff. So, the song was partially inspired by a Fleetwood Mac song called Oh Well, where the music stops and then we have a vocal. One more fun fact about the song is that some listeners believe that the Black Dog was some sort of hellhound or something, because of all the supposed satanic references in the album. Rock and roll. This song came about when they were recording their song Four Sticks, which we'll hear later on in the album. Bonham had an impossible drum pattern, and he got so frustrated he just started playing a different riff altogether based on the 1957 Little Richard song Keep a Knockin'. Then Page starts playing his guitar, and before you know it, they came up with It's Been a Long Time, which was the bones for this song, and they finished all that in about a half hour or so. As the title suggests, rock and roll, the song is based on one of the most popular structures in rock and roll, the 12-bar blues progression in A. Rock and roll was a term that blues musicians like to use, which meant sex. Plant wrote the lyrics as a response to critics who claimed that their previous album, Led Zeppelin III, was not rock and roll at all, because it had more of an acoustic, folk sound to it. And Plant wanted to prove that they can still rock and roll. Okay, I love songs with the mandolin. This is Jimmy Page playing right here, and he borrowed it from John Paul Jones. He just started playing one day, you know, at the chimney at Headley Grange, and he just started playing the song. Page says that his style is like a cross between Pete Seeger, Earl Scruggs, and just total incompetence. A lot of the lyrics are seen by Lord of the Rings fans as one of the major battles from Return of the King. One of the biggest references to the series is the mention of ring wraiths. Drums will shake, the castle wall, the ring wraiths are out in black. The Battle of Evermore was written after Robert Plant read a book on Scottish history. The song is an everlasting battle between night and day, which you can interpret as the battle between good and evil. And what you're hearing here is the only Zeppelin song to have a guest vocalist. This is Sandy Denny. Her voice in the song is representing the town crier, urging people to put down their weapons and to stop the fight. Plant is acting as the narrator. Her contribution to the album got her her own symbol, which we saw on the record sleeve, of 3 pyramids. Sandy Denny died in 1978 after suffering a brain hemorrhage from falling down the stairs. let us have a moment of silence and let us hope that she is on her way to the stairway to heaven. This song is considered to be the greatest rock and roll song of all time. I'm talking about Stairway to Heaven. Fun fact, Led Zeppelin wasn't the first to title a song Stairway to Heaven. That credit goes to Neil Sedaka, who included a song by that name on his 1960 album. Neil Sedaka sings Little Devil and his other hits, and took it all the way to number 9 on the charts. Page was messing around with his acoustic guitar one day, and he came up with different sections which he just kind of married together and formed the overall structure of the song. He ran it by John Paul Jones, and then got into it the next day with John Bonham, who couldn't get the timing right, and while this was going on, Plant was just writing, and he got most of those lyrics right then and there. And the lyrics are about a woman who accumulated money only to find out the hard way her life has no meaning and will not get her to heaven. She was a woman who got everything she wanted without having to give anything back.
I have seen rings of smoke through the trees and the voices.
This line right here could be a reference to Tolkien's book referring to the smoke rings blown by the wizard Gandalf. This song received some criticism from the church because televangelist Paul Crouch claimed that this line,
If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alone there. It's just a sprinkling for the May Queen. Yes, there are 2 paths you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on.
played backwards, was satanic. Now Plant asked, why on earth would you have ever thought of doing that? You've got to have a lot of time on your hands to even consider that people do that. Now, they did use some backward sounds, but only for an oral effect, not because they were trying to put something backwards into the song. They weren't trying to put any messages or anything. So let me put that out there. There are no intended backward messages in Stairway to Heaven. 43 years after this album came out, Francis Alexander Malachi, a lawyer for the trust of late Spirit guitarist Glenda California, he filed a plagiarism lawsuit on Stairway to Heaven because he felt the intro was very similar to Spirit's song Taurus. The intention was to block the re-release of Led Zeppelin IV until California was given a co-writer credit and a portion of the profits. I put a link to both the songs Stairway to Heaven and Taurus in the description below, and so you guys can listen to them, see what you guys think, see if they are similar enough for this lawsuit to even be anything at all. John Paul Jones reflected back on the song, and he says he really likes it because it encompasses a lot of elements of the band itself. From the acoustic start to some of the jazzier stuff in there to the really heavy end, and he just liked how everything just fit into place. Now Plant, he has different feelings about the song. He hated the song. When they were rehearsing it, the only way he agreed to even sing the song is to have a reggae tune to it. I'd love to hear that. Like I said earlier, this song is considered the most famous rock song of all time, and it was never released as a single to the general public, and it was the most requested song on the radio. As popular as a song it is, the band refused to release it as a single because they viewed it as, if you like the song, buy the whole album. And this is the only song to have the lyrics on the album.
And she's buying
Page was going to leave a guitar part at the end, but he left it off because of how powerful Plant's vocals ended at right there. One more thing I'd like to mention is the very first time they performed this song live was before the song was released on the album, and the way that Plant's voice just kind of trailed off, fans weren't really sure that the song ended yet, so they didn't want to clap just yet. So when they got off stage, he says, "See, I told you they wouldn't like it." Little did he realize that it would be considered the #1 greatest rock and roll song of all time. And wow, did I spend a lot of time talking about that. But I suppose a song as big as that deserves a little extra attention. Now let's move on to side 2. Robert Plant describes the song Misty Mountain Hop as a bunch of hippies getting busted. About the problems you can come across when you have a simple walk in the park on a nice sunny afternoon. In England, it's understandable because wherever you go to enjoy yourself, Big Brother is not far behind. Fun fact, Misty Mountains are a real place. They're in Wales. And they're also referenced in Return of the King. Another Lord of the Rings reference. Page wrote this one night at Headley while the rest of the band was sleeping. Four Sticks got its name because Bonham was using 4 drumsticks, 2 in each hand, and he only recorded 2 takes of this because, as Page said, it was physically impossible for him to do another. Page and Plant wrote it before heading up to Headley Grange to record with the rest of the group. It was apparently difficult to record, and the shifting beats were unusual. This is another song with elements containing some Indian music in there. Another one with this kind of reference is the song Black Mountainside on their first album. Vocals were heavily processed and given an electronic sound. And we also have a synthesizer solo. Like I said earlier, this song led to the creation of the song Rock and Roll. Glenda California was inspired by Joni Mitchell's song California. In fact, they were huge fans of Joni Mitchell's, and when they performed the song live, Plant would often say Joni after.
Without a king, they say she plays guitar and cries and sings.
The song originally started off to be about earthquakes, and then the song changed to be The Search of a Woman. The mandolin in the song was played by Jones, and Page is playing acoustic guitar. Originally the song was going to be called Guide to California instead of Going to California. And the song was written on a poem that Page wrote in a notebook, and he found it years later, and the song just branched out from there. We are now in the final song of the album. The drum beat, oh I love the drum beat. That drum beat was recorded using the Headley Grange stairwell. There was a mic that was planted 3 stories up, and the drum echoed upward, and the mic just caught this really great sound. Also, everything in the song except for Plant's vocals were slowed down to give a slightly heavier feel. And something I want to point out is that all 4 members wrote the song, but you also saw that there was a 5th name, Memphis Minnie. See, the band took a lot of grief from blues fans because they relied heavily on other artists in their earlier work and not giving them any credit. The song is about the Great Mississippi Flood in 1927. African American workers were forced to work on the levee at gunpoint, piling sandbags to save neighboring towns. And after the levee breached, blacks were not allowed to leave, and they were forced to work in the relief and the cleanup effort. Many left at the first chance they got, since there was no work in the Delta after the destruction of all the plantations. Memphis Minnie was a blues artist who wrote the song back in 1929, and Plant had her record in his collection. And a lot of lyrics from that song evolved into their version of When the Levee Breaks. And the song was difficult to perform live, and was only performed live twice, and it was also difficult to mix. That line of "Going to Chicago, sorry I can't take you," that was taken from a Count Basie song from the 1930s. And that concludes the last song on this album, and this has been Led Zeppelin IV, or Four Symbols, or Runes, or whatever you want to call it, because you know what, it doesn't matter what you call it, because it's not going to change anything about this album. Because even without a title, this album holds up as one of the greatest rock and roll albums of all time, and that is why it is on this channel. This has been Awesome Andrew of Awesome Albums, telling you why Led Zeppelin's 4th album is an awesome album. See you guys next time.